Welcome to the Adam Rothstein Hockey Podcast. This is your podcast for all things hockey. On this podcast, we talk about past history to the modern day and what you can do to grow the sport. I am your host, Adam Rothstein. All right, let's get to the show. And welcome back to the Adam Rothstein Hockey Podcast. With me today is Matteo Esposito. Matteo, how are you?
I'm doing well. Pumped to be here, and glad you took the time. Thanks for having me on.
All right, so tell me a little bit about yourself.
Uh, Geez, a kind of loaded question these days, but I guess I'll start with I was born on Hilton Head Island. When I turned 6, we moved up north, South Carolina, that is. We moved up north for a bunch of reasons, but a big one was that my two older brothers and I couldn't play ice hockey in South Carolina. So we went to a prep school called Brunswick. All three of us played there. I have a younger sister as well. And eventually moved on after Brunswick to the British Columbia Hockey League, played in Chilliwack for a full year with my older brother, Mark. Second year at juniors was a loaded year. Definitely took a toll and saw some serious mental health struggles because of it in the years to come. And then I ended up technically last team was the Danbury Hat-Tricks in the Federal League, but before then I played at Wesleyan University in Connecticut. My brother Luke still plays in the top German league and spent 6 years in the American League, and then my middle brother, Mark, who I played with in Chilliwack, went to Amherst College, Division III school in Massachusetts. So that's kind of, I guess, the hockey route. Other than that, I'm kind of working in the addiction recovery and mental health field right now.
Okay, so how does one become addicted to, let's say, alcohol or heroin?
Hmm. Another loaded question. I
Yeah.
guess that I'll just say first thing that popped into my mind. I mean, I'm obviously in no position to diagnose anyone or go over the exact criteria of a substance use disorder, but the first thing I thought of is roughly, or some people will say exactly, 50% genetic and 50% environmental factors. So, for example, my addiction, which we can get into briefly or in depth, I'm a pretty open book, and kind of where that sort of, in my opinion, took hockey from me, the mental health side of things, which was obviously a journey in its own, but the predisposition that one has to develop a substance use disorder, the genetic component, and then there's also the environmental piece. What happens in their life? What stressors are there? What are they exposed to at an early age? And those, when combined, can be a journey.
Okay. Um, let's talk about the environmental things, especially with kids growing up. Now, if anything, for me, hockey actually kept me away from alcohol. Ever I didn't drink. I was around a very, you know, a lot of great what I would call older brothers during my time at Towson. And they were like, "No, Adam, don't drink. Even though you're a bench warmer, don't drink. You'll get your time." And just didn't drink. And for most, uh, you know, barely ever drank. Uh,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but but definitely having a good support system, will keep kids out. Uh, so so have you noticed anyone growing up get into a bad habit such as drugs or alcohol?
Yeah, me.
Oh,
Uh,
I mean, yes, but anyone else is my question.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I think getting into the world of addiction and then eventually getting on the other side of it. I've been sober since January 17th of 2023, and after many trials and tribulations and treatment centers, and just kind of finally waved the towel and accepted what I had to accept. In terms of others, I think once you're kind of engulfed in that arena and you open up to people and then, just say, hey, I'm actually going through this. And then that person's like, oh, well, it's funny you say that. My dad's going through that right now, or like I lost my younger brother to suicide, or whatever it is. In terms of guys I played with, yeah, I mean, I have several teammates from just college, which was not that long ago, who are sober now because they had problems, whether it was binge drinking or powerless over other drugs. It's everywhere. In my opinion, in a lot of ways, it's not talked about enough. There's definitely a time and place to go deep with the guys in the locker room, but there's still a stigma around mental health. There's still a stigma around addiction, and not to be too dark, but the truth is, people lose lives over the shame and embarrassment that is somehow still required to open up and talk about it.
Understood. Does the does addiction happen more so after college or during college? Um, what do you believe is more likely?
In my experience after, and I kind of laugh because I've heard this saying, you can never be an alcoholic in college, which is absolutely not true. But it's kind of an interesting 4 years or however long you do it, because you can have degenerative tendencies and like no one really blinks an eye because you're partying 4 days a week or whatever it is. I surely did for a while. You're drinking 25 beers on a Saturday, and if you do that after college or before any other time in your life, it's like, what is going on? But those 4 years, um and I, again, like, I played college hockey. I made a lot of amazing friendships at the rink and outside the rink. But in terms of addiction, like, I would say, I can't speak generally or like on average or for the whole population, but at least for me and what I've seen in my circle, um, definitely exposure at a young age is a factor. And then, like I said, college, you can kind of get away with so much. You can have 20 beers on a Saturday and then 15 on a Sunday if you feel like it. No one really thinks too much about it. But when any of those binge drinking or smoking weed a lot or those behaviors carry on after your 4 years and you're trying to manage work and then possibly a family and all that, when those carry over after your 4 years, which they did for me, especially like the smoking and the binge drinking, that's when it really kind of, I started to look at, like, it really got out of hand when I was removed from the college environment and kept partying like I was in college.
And like I said before, most of the time, just actually being with your teammates, but having those very early morning practices at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then rushing to even your 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. class
Yeah.
after, you know, you're not going to think about drinking. You're going to want to be focused both on the ice and off the ice too. So I would also add that in my experience, just having that 7 a.m. practice, 5 days a week certainly helped.
Yeah, absolutely. We typically practice after class. We had the odd one in the morning. But I definitely was a ringleader and like kind of led the charge off the ice in a lot of ways, with traditions and drinking and stuff. But when it came to in season, like, I didn't drink before games. I was never drunk or high at practice. I obviously had was getting after it too much, and then, like I said, after college led to a lot of problems and had to eventually get sober. But my where it really ramped up was out of season. So in the fall, before the season started, and in the spring after, when we didn't have regular practices, we were working out and stuff, but you could, long story short, party a lot more. So the season, I agree, helped a ton. You have more responsibility, you have to take more ownership. Um, and also the guys in the locker room hold you accountable, but at the same time, we're having a ton of fun off the ice, making memories, and I struggled to find the balance between doing those things and making it to class, getting homework done, getting to practice, and just staying mentally healthy, which I wasn't able to do in college.
Is there anything the NCAA does to intervene when an athlete just gets really addicted to alcohol, for example, and like they have to like just flag this athlete and just say, hey, this athlete's not performing, he or she is not performing. We need to take this person out. Is there a system in place that the NCAA does? Because I never played in the NCAA. I played D1 club at the highest level. That was the highest level we had in Maryland. And I just want to get your perspective. Does the NCAA ever intervene on such an issue?
Not that I know of. When I was, I would say, it's funny because drinking for me, I do check the box for a substance use disorder, for alcohol, and I could go forever on in detail on weed and mushrooms, whatever it is. Like I'm a pretty open book on my mental health journey and addiction, but it was never an isolating substance for me. I drank with the boys and had a blast doing it, and I'm not going to say it didn't cause problems because it did, but it was really it was partying and seeing the guys and making memories and traditions and all that. Weed ended up causing me a ton of problems, isolating, um, and just kind of being alone on that island later during college and after college. But I guess to answer your question, I don't know of any. I sort of was my own advocate and said, hey, like this is a problem for me. I can't get a grip on it. The smoking weed, and I ended up getting a heart condition where my pulse would elevate. It really, really rapidly increase in terms of beats per minute when I would get THC in my system. To give you like a slight backstory of my addiction, and when I got that heart condition diagnosis, the cardiologist said you need to stop smoking weed or you could have a heart attack. So I did. A couple months later, I was smoking again, and I obviously hit me like, whoa, this might be out of my control. And I truly felt powerless over the THC, just the connection it had in my brain. There was something about it. So I was in college when that happened, and I obviously knew something was off and had to advocate for myself. And eventually, in the middle of my sophomore season, left, took a medical leave, and went to a residential treatment in North Carolina for 75 days to figure my life out, which didn't stick, but it was just a piece in the puzzle.
I um can I tell you about my more about my experience just so
Yeah, for sure.
there okay, so I did have teammates who were smoking weed during a winter session. During our winter break, I never had a winter break during freshman year because I was in Towson or in Abington slash Abington where we played. Um, and and a lot of our teammates would smoke weed and for a reason in the back of my mind, even because of my grandfather having a heart condition and just not knowing what an a high functioning autistic person would fare in that situation, I had to remove myself. But I've noticed that just being with your friends and going to Thousand Hot Bagels, going to just be there and watching movies late night and not with alcohol, not with anything, that is the stuff that just keeps you going too. And I didn't even think about it too. And it also helped that my teammate had a cute dog that I watched over when they did go out to the club. So, and I was watching him. His name was Floyd.
You were much of a clubber.
What?
You were much of a clubber, ripping it up
I
late.
never clubbed. I mean, not really. I never clubbed or maybe like once or twice. It was not for me. And
Yeah.
I don't know. Aspie people don't typically like loud noises, but yet when I go to watch an NHL game, go to an actual specific sporting event where you're in your
Hmm.
seat, it's a much different experience than going clubbing.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. It's interesting. I also experienced the feeling of being on the other side, the cleaner side, or whatever you want to call it, out of the party group, out of the weed smokers and the drinkers. When I was playing juniors, we partied in Chilliwack in the BCHL my first year juniors, but like I didn't smoke a lot of weed, like a couple times, and we would drink when we could, and we had a couple days off, and the whole team would get together. And then my second year, I played on I don't even know, one, two, three, four different teams in 5 months across Alberta, Manitoba, and Pennsylvania, and that really took a toll on me, like I mentioned earlier. But I remember being in Manitoba for the Dauphin Kings actually, and I was still really set on playing Division 1 hockey, which I fell short of, and also, I mean, just I fell short of my basically lifelong dream, which is still kind of an ongoing kind of search for a replacement, or whatever the word is. But I remember being on the sort of the other side of that and wondering, like, how can these guys be smoking weed? Like, we have a game tomorrow. How can they be going home from practice and before practice and really focus and lifting hard and in really good shape and just trying to accomplish my dream um, and and get to the goals that I had set. And then obviously in college, I became one of those ringleaders. So it was an interesting circle, but I know what you mean on the sort of wondering what's going on there and why are guys doing that. But I kind of went from there to the ringleader, and now I'm sober, helping people trying to do the same thing. So it's been a few circles round and round.
Um, so this question I had to write down, uh, and just did want to take a bit of a side note here, but what separates D3 from other NCAA divisions, and I guess where would D1 club factor in? Because I had a lot of guys come out of high school playing AAA or just coming off the junior team, and they took a year or two for themselves, a sabbatical for themselves, and they were right there, and it still looked intense. Do you have, is there anything of a difference that you would notice? Any teammates come up from D1 club?
Uh, we we had a couple walk-ons, I guess, when you mentioned coming up from D1 club. Not that not anyone specifically comes to mind being a D1 club player coming up to D3. I guess, like, for the first part of your question, what separates D3 from D1 from D1 club? I mean, part of my mind is it's close. Like, there's, in a lot of ways, there are not a lot, but I also know the top end D1 players. It's not even close from what I've seen in D3. There are a lot of unbelievable D3 players, but if you look at the top six forwards, or even every forward on a high end D1 team, there's a big difference. The goaltending, there's a big difference, size, but also just a lot of those players are going to play in the NHL. Some of them are drafted, whereas Division 3, 90+% of guys, their career's over after their senior year. And that's not to say, like, I played with uh, guys at Wesleyan who definitely could have done well in Division 1. And I think when you get to the highest end of Division 3 players and sort of the bottom six forwards, or the guys who are getting scratched in D1, it can be a little blurry. But I think as a whole, as a league, as a division, and when you look at, like, the top teams in D1 against the top teams in D3, there's a pretty massive difference in my opinion. I don't know enough about D1 club. I also know there are some great players, but obviously once you start getting to the top teams in the country of Division 1, and then guys who are getting drafted and going on to play pro, there's a pretty huge difference.
Is there an arrogance factor when someone gets addicted to drugs? I mean, so let's say you have a kid make the D1 NCAA team in Michigan very hard to do, and then he starts smoking dope. Um, do you think that there's a little bit of arrogance and just, you know, when you're like 18, 19, you feel
Hmm.
invincible. And then it's like, I can smoke weed, I can drink and go play tomorrow and yakety yak and all that stuff, and that's not going to affect me. Um, Believe me, there are a lot of things that can mess up your groove. Eating too many cookies before a practice, yeah, I don't recommend that one. Um, uh, there's that, but I do. There is a bit of arrogance, and I see it with football players that I can do anything sort of thing, and there is this dangerous mindset that because I I'm invincible, I'm on the line, I'm big, I'm strong, I'm in shape, I'm young, I got time sort of thing. But it's that very arrogance that ultimately leads someone to get addicted because if you're exposed to something enough, you're going to get addicted to it. It's just a matter of time and also not falling into that trap.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because when you first started describing the 18, 19-year-old, the first word that popped into my head was invincible, and then you said it. Um, I think it's really challenging. I think someone I can't imagine, especially now that players are getting paid, and when I mean, football and basketball and stuff like that are a whole different discussion. But it's I don't think it's easy. I think yeah, it can be seen as arrogance for sure when an 18, 19-year-old kid comes in and leads the league in points or um I think that's challenging because you're so young and then you get that invincibility feeling as a teenager, as a 21-year-old. Um I never experienced having that level of skill at that age or ever, and being at the top of the league and the top of the food chain. But yeah, it's definitely dangerous, especially when you start giving kids money at that age. They're exposed to stuff young. It's not in my experience or research and schooling and just life lessons, it's not guaranteed that someone's going to get addicted, and it's a matter of time if they're exposed to something enough, but it's increasing their risk. So I know what you mean, and especially at the early age. And um, yeah, I mean, it's just tricky. I don't think there's a clear answer to is there an arrogance or sort of what to do when someone's 18, 19 and gets that feeling.
Do do coaches ever notice these addictions in players or when they're not performing and it's not just a bad practice, it's like I can tell that this kid is off and 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 have there ever been any professors or any professors that's like, he may be a hockey player, but he's off. Have you experienced anything of that? Um, uh, Anything like that?
I'm trying to think of an example other than me. I mean, I know what it was a huge help in me getting sober, I guess I'll say, and also inspired me to uh, write a letter to my younger self, which I put out when I got a year in recovery. I just kind of put it on our Instagram for Invisible Challenge, the mental health awareness brand I've been working on starting up, and got some pretty awesome feedback from friends and family. But what inspired me to do that was Colin Wilson. He wrote two articles on the Players Tribune. The first one was called The Things You Can't See. And he wrote about his experience with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and how he managed that while playing the NHL. I want to say he was drafted seventh overall when he was young, and um, played in Nashville. And I've gotten to know him, but he helped me get sober. But when he came out um, and told his story and said, "This is how my OCD manifested. This is what it looked like. I'm going to be open about this." When Jimmy Hayes died, he wrote another article on the Players Tribune called Addiction. When I read that, and I don't read much, it's hard for me. I think I read both of his articles twice. When I read Addiction in 2021, I was like, whoa, just related to it. And he talked about his experience in the NHL while dealing with a severe substance use disorder. He really went through it. And when I saw how open he was about it, it inspired me to do the same thing. And I ended up getting connected with him through a teammate of my brother's, and they played together at Harvard. Um, so I reached out to him and he connected us, and he ended up helping me get sober. But I guess that was the one experience that stood out to me, not a teammate of mine, but very much one of many, many untold stories that kind of go in depth of a player going through it while playing at the highest level there is. So it was pretty it just stood out to me and ended up helping me a lot.
Yeah. So here's something else. What signs should professors and coaches look for in NCAA athletes? Given the fact that I guess, all athletes in college are very susceptible to that because you're constant, you have 5 days of practice. You still have to hit the weight room, even in club, even though we're not, there's no mandate. We're not under an NCAA umbrella. You still have to hit it just to make, to make it to the bench, make it to be a reserve, and
Yeah.
to do all that. But are there any signs that a coach or even a professor should look out for that you would suggest to them?
Um, it's tough because I think it's so case by case. Like there's not a, I don't know if there's a clear answer to that, at least one that comes out to me, because a coach is going to know his players. Um, and if I think if they're seeing lashing out, or if they're seeing just behavior that's maybe atypical, or they can sense something's off, I think talking to that player straight up and just checking in, saying like, "Hey, how you really doing?" or "Hey, how have you been?" You can cut the BS, whatever it takes to get that kid to open up. And maybe he's fine and he's just checking in. But also, I think like having more open dialogue in the locker room. I know the guys on my team were unbelievable, and like still all of my closest friends are from Wesleyan, and they were so supportive when I had to go to treatment and when I came back and then left again, just couldn't manage it. I guess in terms of signs, like I said, you kind of just got to know your players, and I think like it might even more be on the guys in the locker room because they see, the drinking Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And what's wild, I mentioned earlier, college, like kids do that and they're not addicts. That's just the environment they're in. They're just partying. And when they get out of college, they get a job. And a lot of other people, including myself, don't come out of those habits right away. So it's really, I don't think it's like a clear answer, but I think the locker room is where it starts. Like if you really know a guy, you can tell when something's off. And just also having that one guy or 10 guys or your closest teammate, whatever it is, to be able to say, "Hey, I'm concerned about how much I'm drinking," or "I can't get a grip on this anxiety," or "I've been battling depression." Just having guys you can actually talk to makes a big difference.
Exactly. And I would certainly recommend having after practice stretches and meditation. Now, we don't typically do that, at
No,
least not anymore. Once you get past age 14, you don't typically do that anymore. And you might want to carve out some time, like take a Wednesday, carve out some time with the guys, stretch, meditate, and just be there and be present so you can get a grip on the anxiety. Exact. Just for a lack of a better saying. Tell me about Invisible Challenge. I've glossed over that this entire time.
no, you're good. Invisible Challenge is a mental health awareness brand. It's very much just getting started, but it represents the idea that everyone you meet is fighting a battle. You might not know what that is. It might not be a mental illness, but just creating empathy and awareness around other people's struggles that you might not be able to see. Um, Invisible challenge literally meaning something you can't see, some struggle that someone else is going through. Could be your best friend, could be a someone on the street that you just passed by, and whether they've lost someone in their life, or they got stuck in traffic and they're frustrated, or they have crippling anxiety, or they're first on their 24th hour of being sober. Like, it doesn't have to be a mental illness. So invisible challenge, we have, I mean, I'm wearing a shirt right now. It's kind of just getting the brand out there and raising awareness around the conversations that need to be ignited in order to ultimately end the stigma. And might sound grandiose, but ultimately save lives. Because I personally know people who have died by suicide who obviously felt isolated enough that they couldn't talk to someone, um, which is, life's biggest tragedy. And it might seem dark and dramatic, but it's the truth and it's out there. And I think invisible challenges, if nothing but a mission and an initiative to put a dent in that.
Okay. Um, now I definitely can relate to the I definitely can relate to an invisible challenge, given the fact that I'm on the spectrum and I've been through so much, and 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 you don't know what someone's going through, and you just have to give a little grace when you
Right.
say, okay, um, drug recovery, closing thoughts. Um, so you still play hockey at all?
Uh, Not competitively. I was just thinking because I do, but not nearly as much as I like to. I'm living back on Hilton Head now, where I was born, so there's not a whole lot of ice hockey here. The Savannah Ghost Pirates actually have an East Savannah has an East Coast hockey league team here called the Ghost Pirates, and people love it. So I'm hoping. I actually texted the coach and said, "Hey, if you need someone to shoot on for after practice or whatever it is, I can strap them up." And played in college, so I play in tournaments over the summer just for fun, but love it. And I think with kind of how I've touched on mental health, I truly believe it kind of in a lot of ways stole the game from me. I don't have any regrets and wouldn't change anything, but I know I lost a lot of minutes because of my own brain, which obviously when you have the physical ability, it's a pretty tough soak. But I think because of that, I still love it and I still miss it and play as much as I can. Yeah,
What year did you graduate, by the way?
I
Just
didn't.
curious.
I
Oh,
didn't. I graduated high school in 2015, and then after my 2 years of juniors, third gap year, really, I had two surgeries, but mostly mental health stuff. Just had to take the year off. I started Wesleyan in 2018, so had I completed, it would have been 2022 with three gap years. I left in December of 2019 for residential treatment. Then COVID happened, so we didn't have a season, or the pandemic happened, I should say. In the fall of 21, I went back, and by December, I was getting high again and scared, and also wasn't playing, and it was just I just couldn't manage it, so I left again.
I barely touched on the fact that you were a goalie too. Um, was it um you've been through the butterfly era. You know what it's like. So you you trained a bit different than your peers, most of them. Um, was could even just I forgot the question. I'm sorry. But
No, you're good.
okay, how it was so you always enjoyed being the goalie and being the one to be the anchor of the team, right?
I wouldn't say always. I think the second point you hit on was, yeah, I loved being the anchor. I loved the selflessness of the position, no matter who it is. And obviously, not all goalies are the same. But what I love about it is, I think I heard, actually, I know I heard Brent Johnson in an old classic, HBO 24/7 Road to the Winter Classic. He said something like when he was playing for Pittsburgh, I think he was backing up Flurry. He was like, "I love it. I effing love it. You can either be the guy to blow it, make a mistake that costs the game, or you have the opportunity." and the privilege to be the guy to step up and save the game, win the team the game. And I think that at least what I tried to adopt is I only cared for the team. I put the team first. I tried to be the most selfless teammate I could be, and I think that's the beauty of goaltending is there's not a ton of credit for the most part. A little bit of an unsung hero, and I loved being the last line of defense, and no matter who didn't back check, who pinched at the blue line, I never looked at that. I always had a chance to make the last stop, and I think that was like the beautiful piece of being a goalie. But I guess the always portion of your question, it's tough. There's only one net, and I backed up a lot of my career, a ton of it, and just battled for minutes. And I actually here in Hilton Head was a goalie at 5 or something, playing roller hockey at 4, and then the next year as a goalie at 5. And then we moved up north when I was 6, played forward for a year at Mites, and then goalie from then on out. But I always loved skating out too. Um, so kind of everything, every piece of the game I loved. But yeah, goalie was it was a roller coaster to say the least. A lot of ups and downs.
I'm 31, and when I got to Towson, um, I think probably one of the best things for me was that I got to practice every day. Even though I didn't get much playing time, I still got out and did everything too. And 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 I do, and I will say that, you're not the anchor as a winger, not even the anchor as a centerman, uh, because you have support. You're constantly moving your feet, and
Right.
and and maybe it's okay not to always be the anchor and to let someone else go in too. Not just as a backup, but I'm just talking about in life. You don't have to carry the weight on your shoulders.
Yeah, that's well said. I think I did a lot of that, or at least internally, was hard on myself and put a ton of pressure on myself, and definitely the negative self talk took a toll. So yeah, that's well said. I don't know. I just have memories of like me and my brothers when we started to walk on skates, and then my uncle would take us to the training facility he was playing at, and doing lessons. And then do I really want to be a goalie? And eventually, kind of made the decision to commit to it. But yeah, I don't know if it was an always loved it, but I definitely loved the nature of the position and kind of the journey it took me on.
And you were not always active too. You were definitely, sometimes the team's down there on a hot streak and making shots, and you're just waiting for something to happen
Right, right.
too. But it's but it is I will say that it is one of the hardest, if not the hardest position in all of team sports, because no one knows how to do no one knows how to do a butterfly. You get me, Cal Raleigh, and in that, and just teach him to do a butterfly. No, no, he's going to be looking like Dominic Hasek doing stand up at the
The
comedy club.
Dominator.
Yeah, but the Dominic Hasek never did learn the butterfly though. That's the thing. But I mean, it is one of the hardest positions ever, and I do think that having added pressure on you can always just lead you down a dark path. But would you have any recommendations of to any goalie, any hockey player, any athlete coming up that just feels like the weight's on their shoulders and they can't take it?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of it is balance. Like, I I I guess to talk about me for a second and then maybe answer the question. The first thing I thought of is like managing with the guys outside the rink and making memories and drinking on the weekend, whatever it is. I wasn't able to balance all that. So I'm sober now. I'm not saying everyone needs to be sober in college, but definitely, if you are playing in college, finding what works, finding what the balance is and what you can manage, which I wasn't able to do. But I guess like in a broader sense, I think looking at the whole picture, especially for a goalie, makes sense. Like everybody, literally everyone, of course, there's the difference between talent and skill and how far talent can get you, and some kids can get to the NHL on that. But to play at a high level, such a high percentage of athletes need to develop the skill and reps. I guess, long story short, you need the physical piece of it. You need to get reps and put in your hours physically, but also what I was saying, especially for a goalie, is like explore the psychological piece of the position. Um, I've heard when I was a kid, like golf is 90% between the ears. And I think goalie's a lot like that. How quickly can you reset? Like, yes, you need to have the technique and be a physical specimen to play at such a high level, but can you deal with your anxiety? Are substances an issue for you? Have you ever talked to a therapist about your depression? Like, whatever that is, might not be a mental illness, but stuff will come up, and being able to handle those mentally during games, I think, is a pretty key piece of the holistic approach to being an athlete. So everybody needs to check the physical box, but at least where my brain goes is, can you will your way to a win? Can you be a step up mentally from your opponent at the other 200 feet away? So that's just a piece I wish I explored more at a younger age, because it hit me like a truck when I turned 20, and trying to manage that in college was tough. But I think just looking at the whole picture and developing yourself as a person the best you can.
Of course. I guess that would move me to closing thoughts. Um, Anything you'd like to say? Any promotions you'd like to give out?
Uh, yeah, check out Invisible Challenge on Instagram. Very much in the works. I think there's a bit more action on the website, invisiblechallenge.org. I did a TEDx talk telling my story last November in 2024. That's on there. We do have some shirts like this, some hats. That all goes right back into the brand, and trying to spread the awareness that um, you don't know what everybody's going through. Treat people with kindness, be empathetic, and I guess, yeah, that any support we can get around that would be awesome. And just trying to grow that as much as I can, along with the recovery coaching I do for work. And um, but yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and thank you for asking that question. Uh, hope you enjoyed the chat, and I hope other people can see themselves or see their other teammates or brothers in my story, and some of the stuff you shared too, Adam. So
Okay. So that all about do it for this episode of the Adam Rothstein Hockey Podcast. If you would like to support this, please check out my audiobook, Growing Hockey. I cover all the history. I go into video games. I I talk about some famous moments of the game, and uh, you'll definitely enjoy it, and it's worth the listen. I'll have a link to that on for Chirp. Please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, all that jazz. Share it with your friends. If you also want to give me another way to support me, buy the journal too. That's also in the description slash show notes. And anything else, Matteo, before I close out the segment?
that's it. Again, appreciate you having me on, and I hope I brought something worth listening to. Um, and yeah, it was. I really appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully we get a few a few plays.
Okay. Well, you most certainly did bring something. All right. That'll do it for this episode of the Adam Rothstein Hockey Podcast. Peace out.